Good morning. I'm going to call this meeting of the Lawrence Alliance for Education Board to order. My name is John Connolly. I have the pleasure to serve as chair of the board, and why don't we begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The purpose of this morning's meeting is to interview the first of two finalists for the position of superintendent of the Lawrence Public Schools. Because we have a full board and as well honored to have guests with us today, I'm going to move very quickly to interviewing the candidate. I do first want to just introduce our guests. And so if I could start at the far end of the table with our student, if you could say your name and where you go to school, that would be great, and we greatly appreciate you being here today, Leslie.
My name is Leslie Garcia, and I go to school in Lawrence High School, and I am a senior.
And can you also mention your position that you hold at school?
Yep. In school, I am the secretary of my student council.
Betsy.
My name is Betsy Wachowski. I'm a parent to 7- and 8-year-old children that go to the Bruce Annex.
Thank you. Eureka.
My name is Charitza Rizzo, and I am a parent to a child at the Gilmet School, a 12-year-old, and a 8-year-old at the Partham School, and I'm also the chair of the CPAC for Lawrence.
Hi, my name is Colleen Paris. I teach at the FM LAE School, 2nd grade.
And then why don't we just continue, Dr. Ruffin, so that you know each board member, if the board members can each just make a quick introduction, and I think stating any affiliation with the community or organization would also probably be helpful for Dr. Ruffin.
Sure. Good morning. Ventura Rodriguez. I work at the department. I'm an associate commissioner for support and assistance at the department.
Patricia Mariano. I'm a school committee member, District E in Lawrence.
Dr. Noemi Custodia-Lora. I'm the Vice President of the Lawrence Campus and Community Relations at Northern Essex Community College.
John Connolly, Chair of the Board, and I'm the Executive Director of 1647 Inc.
Dan Rivera. I'm the Mayor of the City of Lawrence.
Julia Silverio. I'm the President CEO of Silverio Insurance Agency.
Hi, I'm Jess Andors. I am the Executive Director of Lawrence Community Works and a parent of an 8-year-old in the Lawrence Public Schools, and a member of this board.
Good morning. It's a pleasure meeting all of you.
So what we're going to do today is I'm going to start to my right with Jess Anders. We're going to go and work this way. We're saving the best for last, Leslie. And then we can come back this way, or we'll figure that out however people are feeling. But I want to make sure everybody gets chances to ask multiple questions. And so we'll do one question per member, per person up here, with a 3-minute response from Dr. Ruffin. Dr. Ruffin, I will just say 30 seconds when you're at 30 seconds, and would appreciate if you can stay within 3 minutes. And in this first round, I'm going to, if it is okay, bypass members of the hiring subcommittee. And as we move toward the later rounds, we'll let the hiring subcommittee ask questions if they have any. But the hiring subcommittee has had a 2-hour interview with the candidate already. Is that Yep.
John, can Dan and I switch questions? Because he has a question that I think it
Yep.
would be good to ask first of the
That's great.
candidate, and then I can do mine after. and we
That's
can
great.
go down.
So
Yeah.
that is fine by me. Ventura, are you okay if we bypass? So the members of the hiring subcommittee, Ventura Rodriguez, Julia Silverio, and myself, we will not participate in this first 2 rounds of questions, I'll say, and in the third round, if we feel like we want to ask a question, that will be, we'll do it that way. Okay? Great. So we will open with Mayor Rivera with the first question.
It's just a standard question I have in a lot of interviewees, and I think it might tell a little bit about yourself. It may seem like a softball question, but I think it's really important for us to understand how you got here in your career. Like, tell us a little bit about what went into your life to make you a candidate today in front of us. And the important part, I know you have a small amount of time, the important part.
Absolutely. I'll try very quickly, but succinctly to answer that question. I don't believe that anything happens by chance. So some kind of way to be here at this time is a right time, and it feels that way today and yesterday when I met students, parents, community principals, teachers, members of the committee, and members of the Alliance. It's not a coincidence. Beginning my career as a teacher and administrator, eventually an area superintendent and a superintendent, and then being chosen to lead some turnaround work in Tennessee prepares me for the work that is being done right now in Lawrence. So that's why I say it's not by chance. I think it's the right timing to be able to bring in the skills and the experiences that I've had working in 4 states, learning many systems, and most importantly, connecting with many people in a meaningful way to bring about change to benefit children. I believe that's why I'm here today, because those experiences have come to a point where I could bring it in to make some significant gains and improvement and connect with a community that is just ready to be able to hold its own and to do amazing things on behalf of children.
Thank you.
Jess?
So in Massachusetts, MCAS is kind of king, right? And a lot of time in school is spent in preparation for the standardized test, and I think we all think that there have to be ways to objectively evaluate and measure the progress of students. But I'm wondering if you could give specific examples about how you think about balancing a focus on adequate preparation for standardized tests with addressing the more holistic educational and development needs of the child.
Yes, I am aware that in the state of accountability across multiple states, it's highly important to be able to use that as a measure of student success. I share with our teachers, our staff, and our parents that progress on a state test doesn't start by trying to manipulate practices or practice the test. It comes from absolutely excellent teaching all of the time and using high-quality text and materials for students so that they're learning, and they're learning in diverse learning styles, excuse me, that best meet their needs. Quality instruction every day is a real indicator of how we're going to be very successful on a state test, not just the strategies or the test-taking strategies that we often see when we're trying to beat the test, so to speak. I think that the high-quality instruction that is provided every single day is going to get our students to be successful on the MCAS. Also, excuse me, also very important is to realize that student success is measured in other ways besides the standardized test. the course offerings that they're afforded, the opportunities for co-curricular activities, being exposed to art and music, and
30
being
seconds.
exposed to community services, being college and career ready. Those are not type things that you will necessarily measure in a standardized test, but they are measures of success for your students, and I highly promote those.
Thank you. Noemi?
Hi. My question is, I mean, of all the opportunities that you could pursue in other towns, in other states, and considering the unique demographic of Lawrence, which is very different from the other towns that are in the region, why did you decide to apply here?
When I was approached to look at Lawrence, I looked at the history. I looked at the challenges and the successes. The word turnaround was interesting to me, but I wanted to learn more about the successes that were experienced through your turnaround model that was maybe different from turnaround models and takeover models that sometimes are extremely controversial in other areas. I wanted to learn more about the students and the parents and the community and their needs. And I did that through asking questions and through researching and looking at data. And then, of course, had an opportunity meeting people yesterday and then continue to do so today. So the why Lawrence, when I looked at an opportunity to be able to use talents and skills that I have cultivated over time, I think that's why Lawrence. The experiences that I have in turnaround and to be able to use that to successfully help children navigate maybe complex systems and to help families that may sometimes feel overwhelmed by the complexity of a school system is my passion. The why Lawrence is because I have a passion and a calling to do the kind of work that engages parents in the community, a great teaching staff, and hiring people to be able to engage in that meaningful work. Lawrence, I believe, is ready to see some exciting things happen and eventually go back to local control. I think that the experiences that I've had with the current work that you've done in Lawrence and the future work that's going to be outlined and detailed, I think that's why Lawrence. I have a deep passion for the what children are telling me that is important to them. And I heard from students yesterday that said, you know, there are some things that are being said about us, and it's not really good. And my response to that was, what other people say about you does not define you. You have a real great story to tell. You have multiple talents that are being exhibited in a lot of different ways, and you need to tell that story because it's very significant to what's going to happen with your success in the future. And by researching
seconds.
Lawrence, coming to Lawrence, the why Lawrence is even clearer to me now because I want to be a part of this team and a part of this community that's going to advocate on behalf of all children.
Thank you.
Pat?
Good morning. When we talk about our educational system, we focus primarily on grades pre-K to 12. I would like you to share your vision on including and supporting adult basic education as a necessary and relevant component of lifelong learning and parent engagement. Also, can you share your professional and/or personal experience working with out-of-school youth and adult learners?
Yes. In one of my previous districts, we managed and operated several community schools. They were a part of the entire school system of about 40,000 students, and we had 8 community schools. They were the hub of the community. They created a solid total program for children and for families, which included early childhood through adult education. There were educational classes for parents who wanted to reconnect with jobs and with college and with GED opportunities. They were all able to receive assistance and resources at that one school site. It was clear that for our families to be supported and our families to navigate a complex system, we needed to provide that within the school system. While we took care of the pre-K through the eighth grade students, we also valued the fact that our families needed to connect with networks that would help them be successful. Many worked on a GED, some on life skills, interview skills to help them connect with employers, and we were able to see success with our parents being able to connect with employers through the opportunities afforded at the school level. That was very important and meaningful to the entire community. We serviced the whole child, which meant that we really cared about what happened with their parents and their ability to be able to support their families in a meaningful way. And we provided that in that community school setting, which was by design created to network and created to have opportunities for the entire family. There were multiple languages that were spoken at the school. We made certain that parents understood how to navigate a complex system, and many times that included services that were non-traditional, so to speak, that teachers or others that were connecting with the schools would meet the parents in their community and assist them navigating some of the complex systems that are sometimes a barrier to success. That's how we were able to really meet the needs of an entire community. When parents, sometimes we had parents that were coming in and they'd been incarcerated.
30
and
seconds.
We were able to provide opportunities for them to connect. We utilized skills and the talent and the connection with Goodwill to provide some skills and to provide some interview opportunities and connections with some of the employers that were willing to come in and to mentor and to service our parents as well.
Thank you.
I just want to take a very quick second to acknowledge that Frank McLaughlin, the president of the Lawrence Teachers Union, is present, and we greatly appreciate his presence here. I also want to acknowledge that Acting Superintendent Mary Lou Bergeron is here, and greatly appreciate her presence. And we thank Dr. Bergeron and her team for an extraordinary day yesterday of bringing both finalists throughout the district and getting to meet so many students and teachers and parents and see the schools. And we also know that President McLaughlin also was involved in arranging for his teachers to sit with both candidates, and we appreciate all of his work there too. Ms. Paris.
Good morning. Can you speak more to your institution of your Teacher Leader Initiative?
Our teacher, I listen to our teachers quite a bit in teacher advisories, as well as opportunities for teachers to connect with me about their needs and their concerns on an individual basis, as well as in group settings. When we were experiencing high teacher turnover in my current district and the previous district, some of the comments that teachers shared with me is they were seeking an opportunity to still influence teaching and learning, and they didn't really care to be an administrator. They wanted to have more influence either on their campus or in the teaching field to mentor and to support other teachers. Therefore, we created a teacher leader model that would allow teachers to be able to continue their teaching assignment, receive an additional stipend, but purposefully mentor new teachers to the campus. They would help them with their day-to-day, especially new teachers coming in that don't know how to navigate, where to get the curriculum, where are things located in the school, how do I make my first year less stressful because there's someone there to help and guide me. And part of that first layer was a teacher leader within the school campus, still teaching in the classroom. Then we incorporated other teacher leaders within a school building, such as a learning coach and a teacher support coach. And those were teachers that were still teaching, but they were teaching adults. And they were teaching the adults by mentoring them within a school building, but they helped with evaluations. They helped to coach and to model lessons for teachers. They were having great influence on the teaching practices of their school, and yet they were still able to continue to teach. They did not have to leave the profession or to leave being a teacher to be an administrator to have more influence. And so that teacher leader model was created with input from teachers to allow them to use their talents and their strengths to help other teachers be successful within a school building. We also incorporated incorporated teacher leader coaches that would help those teacher leaders to develop as a teaching in adult learning, because teaching adults is different than teaching children. We wanted them to have the appropriate coaching, the training, the professional development, so that they could be more influential in teaching and learning. That's what we utilize as a teacher leader model, and it's been successfully implemented at 2 of the districts that I've worked with.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Rizzo?
Good morning. The district has recently implemented an inclusion program for our children with disabilities. What are your views in regards to inclusion, and how will you assure parents that this model is implemented in a way that it would benefit both the typical student and the child with disability?
I think inclusion is very important in assuring that all of our students receive quality instruction regardless of disability. Too often we see students with disabilities segregated into a learning and a belief that they're not supposed to learn as much as other students, when actually that stifles their growth and their ability to really become everything that they're created to be. Inclusion model assures that a student is going to be receiving the same curriculum as all students, with the support of the special education that would be provided through a written IEP. Not all students in special ed require the same kinds of support. We want our students to be independent learners and very successful. The inclusion class is meant to make certain that the special education students receive a quality education that's not separate from what we expect all children to learn and be able to do, with the supports that they need to be successful. While inclusion is very important and a significant indicator in how schools approach special education, teaching and learning, it's also important to be individualized on an IEP. Even in inclusion, sometimes students need individual supports that should be written in the IEP, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some students may need the support of a teacher assistant, while others can manage very well with a general ed teacher and a special ed teacher in a classroom. It's incumbent upon us to be able to define the model that best suits the learning needs of our students, and we've got to know, is it working? Why or why not, so that we can make adjustments along the way.
Thank you. Ms. Walkowski?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a two-part question. My first one is, you have chosen a nice time of year to come here, but how are you with a snow shovel?
I'm pretty good with the snow shovel. I will tell you that, very short story just to answer that. That's, I guess, is that your two-part question?
No, I mean, you know what I mean. I'm just teasing, but winters are tough here. Have you taken that into consideration when applying for this job?
Absolutely.
But let's hear your funny story, please.
Well, it's the truth. I mean, it really ties into when I've always wanted to live in an area that experienced 4 seasons. So I'll be very quick about this. I'm from Louisiana. That's home for me, and wanted to. I've gone to Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. When I moved to San Antonio, I was told it doesn't rain very much there, and we had 2 floods. When I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was told, we don't get a lot of snow, and we had 2 blizzards. When I moved to Tennessee, and says, we really don't have a lot of tornadoes, and we've had several. And several snowstorms that required shoveling. And yes, I'm aware of the tough winters, but I'm also aware that that's not an obstacle to doing the work that I'm called to do.
The only reason I ask it is we see a lot of the same faces over and over. There's a lot of good momentum right now in the Lawrence Public Schools, and we see a lot of the same faces, and we like to have fun as much as we're very serious about finding a new candidate. So I just kind of wanted to see you smile up there. But my question is, as a mother that has had 2 children in 3 different schools, we've unfortunately seen a lot of turnover and a shortage of necessary skilled staff members, whether that's paraprofessionals or specialists such as speech therapists, occupational, etc. What is your vision and some of your experience in maintaining and sustaining employment to reduce the turnover rate, and how will you keep those good skilled?
It's a tough issue across America, and some of the ways that we have worked successfully, especially in turnaround districts, because it's tough work. And not everyone can do this kind of aggressive, meaningful work in such a way that is going to assure student learning. It's important to be able to utilize several resources, colleges and universities, obviously, but also in preparing teachers to work in an urban environment. I believe that my experiences with urban institutes and working with colleges and universities and creating those and preparing teachers and teachers that are interning to be able to do that work in the actual environment, in the actual classroom setting, so that they can experience what it's like with a mentor teacher that will help them to be able to navigate the work that needs to be done to be successful in an urban district. I think that's important. I think the teacher supports that we talked about, the teacher leader model, is very effective in supporting a teacher that may be struggling at first. Additionally, I think it's important to be able to look within the district to be able to build the teacher capacity within, whether it's a teacher assistant that we're helping to support to be able to get a teaching degree and a license, and supporting them to become a teacher. Seeing the talent that's within and encouraging people, because sometimes you see someone who's really good with children and you want to encourage them to be able to pursue that degree, and you offer the supports on the ground to help them to do that. I believe increasingly we're going to see shortages in teachers, so we need to be very aggressive in how we seek the teachers and engage them to want to come to Lawrence to do this turnaround work. It's exciting work, and we have an opportunity to bring in teachers, not only from our state, but we have an opportunity to do so by going to other states and recruiting for specifically the turnaround work. As a strand in the early college high school that was created in one of my former districts, we included a teaching strand. I mean, we wanted our teachers to be able to help students recognize their talents, and while we created 4 strands, one was informational technology and health sciences, and also the information manufacturing, we included a teaching strand. Teachers should be encouraging students to want to be teachers. And I'm very pleased to say that some of our students are learning to be teachers. They have a passion for mathematics, and we want to explore that. I think that we have to look at models like that to be able to grow our own, so that we can also continue to support the great teaching that we want to have in Lawrence.
Thanks.
Hi.
Ms. Garcia, thanks.
As a student, I have learned the importance of parent involvement, and can you give us examples of how you have engaged your local community in the past and how you can ensure parent involvement at Lawrence Public Schools?
Yes, it's very dear to me, and I know sometimes it could be quite challenging because different people think of parent involvement in different ways. I think it's critical that we don't lump it all into one sum. Sometimes people think parent involvement means that you have to have parents at school all the time, and other times it means that you want your parents to be involved to support their students so that they're ready to learn once they come into schools. I've engaged with parents by a number of ways. When they're physically present in the schools, when they come in to see me as superintendent in my office, by having parent advisories and by also having parent groups that I meet with to be able to address specific interests or concerns that they may have. But additionally, I know that sometimes parents don't feel comfortable coming to those kinds of events. I've made certain that when I'm invited and even when I know of activities that are ongoing in the community, that I'm there. And I've made great connections with parents by attending a church function or by going to a celebration that was happening in the community because parents were attending. And it meant a lot to the parents to see that I attended, but that I also knew their student. And it was oftentimes students that introduced me to their parents. So making that connection was very important. Knowing that there are some non-traditional ways to engage with parents was important. An example, I had a community that would never go to community meetings. They would never come into the school. There was a distrust there. There was a disconnect there. But when I found out that there was a center within the complex where the majority of her parents lived, I held a meeting there, and it was very well attended. And we heard comments that none of the superintendents had ever come out to the community to meet where parents actually lived, and they appreciated that. And we implemented some tutoring in the center, because when children went home that night, sometimes they didn't have the help that they needed, but because we sent teachers to be able to tutor in the complex, parents felt that, and knew that we genuinely cared, because we didn't have to worry about transportation. We went to them.
Thank you. Dr. Ruffin, would it be better if I hold up this rather than say 30? Is that
Yes,
preferable?
I'm sorry.
Okay, yep. I want to credit Ms. Silverio and Ms. Anders for that.
It was all Ms.
idea. Ms. Garcia, I was thinking maybe we would work this way. Would you be ready for a second question? If not, I can go to someone else. I don't want to put you on the spot that way. If you want a little time, that's fine, and I can come back to you.
I can ask a question.
You
Yeah.
ready to ask a second? And then Ms. Walkowski will go to you next, and we'll work back this way. Great, thanks.
In the past, you have increased academic success in other educational systems. How do you think you can increase academic success in Lawrence Public Schools?
Recognizing that there's a lot of talent here and that one size does not fit all is very important. One of the ways that I have been able to do that is to recognize that there are some really, really, really smart children that don't exhibit that in a traditional way. So we look to honor and to invite children to take more challenging courses. And then we also share with parents why we're seeking that child to go into an honors course. And sometimes that has made such a big difference, because children don't believe that you're paying attention to what they're actually doing. And when they find out that you're seeking them out because of something that they wrote or something that they said or something they expressed to you, and you're asking them and pushing them actually to take more challenging courses, that has worked very well. Likewise, we recognize that early childhood is very important. We know that by the time a student is by third grade, if their skills in reading are not at grade level, we stand a higher risk of losing that child along the way. And so we know that. We've been knowing that for years. We need to really intensify what we're doing in pre-kindergarten through third grade to make certain our students are not intimidated by a stronger curriculum. And we do that by making certain that we're teaching all children with top quality instruction, and then we add in some interventions to help them if they're not succeeding, and then we evaluate if that's working. We should see progress along the way. We should see progress for our students in special education as well as our students that are in ELL, and we should be able to gauge what is working, and then we should make adjustments along the way to guarantee the success of our students. We also need to offer opportunities beyond math, science, language, arts, and social studies. STEM education is critically important. It shouldn't just start in high school. We can do amazing things with children in middle and elementary school to really pique their interest and their talents in science and in mathematics. We need to do that, because that's going to build the capacity of students and their confidence by the time they're in middle and high school. Those are some of the ways that we have made certain that we did not look at a child and predetermine whether that student could be successful. We stretch them and challenge them to be able to reach higher limits.
Ms. Walkowski?
Speaking on behalf of the parents in the district, a lot of concerns and thoughts around childhood obesity and our nutrition services. We currently provide free breakfast and lunch to students. How do you feel about that? And would you sustain that? And how else would you modify the current meal options to help reduce the obesity rate?
My district, as superintendent, we had a healthy initiative project, and we had the largest number of schools participating in the entire state of Tennessee. It included nutrition as well as physical exercise, and it involved the whole school. Our principals, our teachers, our students, our parents were all a part of the Healthy Living Style, and we won an award for 3 years in a row because we were looking at how to better meet the nutritional needs of our students for that very issue. We provided breakfast and lunch to our students in that district. But we also had an opportunity to define what healthy may have looked like. So we had healthy choices for students. We taught students how to be able to have a balanced meal. We also had classes for parents to be able to learn how to use the market, the fresh market goods that were produced in Tennessee at that time to be able to prepare a meal, to prepare snacks for children. And that has worked very well. The program has grown. We were a model in Tennessee. I think that we could do the same thing here in Lawrence. We also had, in my district at that time, an opportunity to grow some of our own vegetables. We had a partnership with Delta Faucet. They donated some land. Our students were able to grow organic fruits and vegetables, and then our students ate those fruits and vegetables. We also had in one of our career and technology labs an opportunity to grow hydroponic plants. We grew our own lettuce. The students sold the lettuce to our nutrition department and also to neighboring stores because they were able to produce it in mass quantity. They also elaborated on that and prepared, we had a culinary arts program, and so they ate the fruits of their labor and later expanded that to grow tilapia, which was a market that was very high in that area. Those are some of the ways that we could grow and expand and utilize the markets that are available here in Massachusetts to be able to develop something very similar that would better meet the needs of our students while teaching them how to eat very, very nutritionally.
Great. Ms. Rizzo?
Lawrence has a large population of Spanish-speaking parents. How would you assure that these parents receive the proper translation when it comes to being active participants in the special education and the IEP meetings of their children?
I think it's important to make certain that there's proper interpretation and translation, that there's a side-by-side advocacy for the parent and for the student that's a participant in that IEP, and to make parents know that their voices and their concerns are so important that we're going to take those into consideration as we write an IEP that really is reflective of what the child needs. To make certain that we are aware that sending a parent to another department or to another meeting is not sufficient, especially when they're navigating a complex system. We need to be respectful of, perhaps we need to walk them through so that they can make the right connections. And we need to provide the language that they're most comfortable with to help them to understand the complexities of what it takes to be very successful in writing a great IEP, so that it's not a one-size-fits-all. I also believe that it is important that we examine our hiring practices to make certain that we have a variety of languages that are spoken within our school district, because I understand while there's a large number of our parents and our students that speak Spanish, sometimes the dialect is different, to make certain that we can connect with our families in a meaningful way so that they know that they're valued and that we take that input as we're designing an effective IEP. And that we also revisit that IEP frequently to let the parents know if we're making progress.
Thank you. Ms. Paris?
How would you describe your most significant achievements as an academic leader in your school or district?
I think that in all of the districts that I've worked, there's evidence, student learning, increase in academic as well as opportunity. That's probably been one of the biggest, it's a great pride to me to know that in a meaningful way I was able to make academics and life better for children, and to measure that from before I came to when I left, to know that it had opened the door for so many children, that's very dear to me. While I have experience in budgeting and successful creation of budgets, the purpose of being able to do that was to find the resources to be able to put back into the classroom for the students. That led to some of those opportunities that we were able to lend to our students. That was significant to me. So when you look at either the resume or you look at accomplishments, the ultimate is for the successes of our students, but being able to budget, to get the money to be able to do that, that was important. But ultimately, it's what happens to your kids. That's where I take my greatest pride. To open up doors of opportunity for children that may not think they could. A specific example was in early college high school. When we created that school, we actually retrofitted a building for the students, created a learning environment for them, and we intentionally sought to recruit students that were first-generation college attendees. We recruited students from all of our high schools, and we also went into the middle schools, and we were asking students to take that first leap into accomplishing something that they had never done before. Many of the children had never taken an honors class, and to quote some of the things that some of the children said to myself as well as to the staff is, "I didn't know I could do this." And to see them grow and thrive and complete multiple college credit as freshmen, and that we worked collaboratively with the community. We worked with Jackson State Community College to be able to create that. We worked with the technical school to know that it impacted children's lives in a meaningful way, and they felt comfortable saying and believing that they could was a great accomplishment. And I will always feel that that is my responsibility to do that for children.
Thank you. Ms. Mariano?
Yes, thank you. As Lawrence Superintendent, let's look into a crystal ball, and a year from now, you are reporting to this board. What would the status of the Lawrence Public Schools be at that time?
In a very few short weeks, there's going to be a new plan written for Lawrence based on the data from this year that will help us write the next 3 years plan. As superintendent coming in immediately, I would begin working and identifying some key indicators of success, which would include student achievement, that would include closing gaps for students with disabilities and ELL students, that would include more students' participation in honors classes, and include more students that are reading at grade level and have significantly made gains in literacy as well as mathematics, science, and social studies. In a year's time, you should see a utilization of the accomplishments that you've already done and moving forward with an aggressive yet supportive and collaborative plan that would bring about continuous improvement that you could see, that parents would know is evident, and that our students would be able to speak to. And I would expect that in a year's time, the Alliance would be able to say that this is a major step in the work that we do together so that we can show that we are on the right track to improving and eventually moving in the right direction to local control in the next few years.
Thank you.
That's what I would expect that you would see.
Thank you. Dr. Custodio-Laura?
Yes, so a lot of the questions that have been addressed here regarding engaging other groups include engaging the parents. So my question is, as you move forward, let's say that you have the job, how would you intend to engage other groups like central office, the school committees, the teachers union, and some of the other groups that also have very strong feeling about how the district should move in the direction that will help students to succeed?
The work of a superintendent is never done in a silo. I could never say that I have done any of this work. It is what we were able to do. I had the wonderful opportunity yesterday to engage with members of the central office staff. I would consider the members of the central office staff a first team with me, that we engage together to have a common vision that we could have permeate the entire system. The message should not be carried only by one person. It should be carried by everyone who is really dedicated to the work. And I met some amazing people that had multiple years in the district, and that is so credible and important to moving forward. You have to remember the experiences of the past, and you have to utilize that along with other talent to be able to move your district forward. I look forward to having some engaging work with the teachers union as well as other unions here in Lawrence, because I believe they're so important to the critical work ahead. Likewise, our staff, our principals who are doing amazing work to recognize that and to make certain that everyone knows everyone is going to be important in articulating that clear vision for the district, and I want to be transparent as well as physically present to listen to what they're telling me, because that's going to be important to craft a vision and a direction for the future. And I consider the entire staffing and the union as part of a team that's going to engage with me and others to be able to get that work done. As well, I see the Alliance as a very important team, a part of a team that I will be a part of as your new superintendent if I'm selected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Rivera?
I want to kind of piggyback on the question you just asked, and drill down specifically on the unions. Not only we have a teachers union, we also have, the cafeteria workers, janitors, all this stuff. Seeing that you're from Louisiana, and I'm pretty sure you keep up with, things that happened in New Orleans after Katrina, and I think that the general, I should say differently, a widespread ideas around what happened post-Katrina with what was a unionized environment and what people might perceive as that being gone away, but also that a lot of people making money from the school system after they took away the union structures, EMOs and all those things. I think we've made a lot of gains here because Superintendent Riley figured out a way to put as many feet on the street to fight as many problems as we had, and that does include some charters running our schools, it goes to some EMOs, but we do have a collective bargaining agreement with all our teachers, regardless of whether you are in a traditional school or not. Can you just talk to me about how you feel the role of a collective bargaining agreement? I don't like to talk about it as just the union. I'm talking about this agreement that we have with our teachers and our staff plays in, at the end of the day, making sure we have a great education environment for our kids.
Absolutely. I think it's critically important. I think it's important to have the unions. I think it's important for me as superintendent to understand what the existing contracts are. And I have a responsibility to make certain that we honor them and that we're respectful and inclusive. I would look forward to meeting with the union representatives on a regular basis, not just when there's a problem. In previous experiences that I've had in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was on speed dial. And so it was very easy to access me and for me to access our Oklahoma Educators Association representatives. We met regularly, at least once a month, informally, and we really talked through issues. We did have negotiations over salary and working conditions, and I would look forward to doing that, not only with the teachers union, but all of the other contracts that we have, and I would honor that and be very respectful. It takes everyone working together to make the district strong, and I'm so excited about the opportunity to do that.
Ms. Sanders?
So as superintendent, you're going to have to navigate challenging situations in which there are competing and equally valid interests, right? And I could give just a couple of examples. Like perhaps, for instance, you want to create better relationships between parents and teachers, but it's hard to find a meeting time that works for teachers' working hours and parents' working hours, right? Or you might have students at the high school level that are interested in a broader base of sexual education has been currently the case in the schools, but you might have parents coming from very strong faith-based backgrounds that have deep reservations about that. How do you navigate those kind of competing but equally valid interests? And can you give us some specific examples where you've had to do that in the past and how you did it?
Oftentimes, there will be competing priorities even, as well as competing views. When that has happened, and it has happened frequently, the decisions that ultimately came after weighing all of the feedback was the best decision that met the needs of the students. An example, and that happened while I was the assistant superintendent in Tulsa, and it was over sexual education. And there were competing values, there was opposing views, and it was a very highly opinionated topic. What we were able to do was through collaboration with agencies, through collaboration with parents, through collaboration with student groups, with in-school staff, we were able to design a curriculum option for students. Parents could opt out, but most did not because of the process we used to get to that point. It allowed it was a non-biased curriculum, but it was factual. Parents had an opportunity to view it before it was implemented, and once we got to the point of implementation, it was highly supported because of the way that we did it. We didn't enforce it, we didn't mandate it, we just talked about the times and the issues that many communities were having and the questions students were asking that they deserved to have answered in a way that was going to educate them and inform them accurately. And once we took those steps, and it took a while to get there, and once they heard from some of the community organizations that were going to be presenting the curriculum and had an opportunity to really vet it, there was more agreement and more benefit to how we can do this with opt-out for parents as opposed to not doing it at all. That was a competing kind of priority that we worked through collectively.
Great. So at this point, we've completed 2 rounds of questioning. I'm going to offer Ms. Silverio and Dr. Rodriguez the opportunity to ask questions in this next round. I will forego this round, though, just in the interest of time, and maybe ask questions in a 4th round. Ms. Sanders, if you're okay, would you be ready to start this round, or I can go to the mayor, or?
No, yes.
You'd be ready to start? Okay.
I'm good. All
Great.
right. Yeah, okay. So, we've talked a little bit about parent engagement, and I think you've answered some of the questions that I have around that, but I guess I'm also interested in, I think that a lot of times parent engagement strategies don't necessarily take into account the tremendous strengths and resources that parents have, particularly in a district like Lawrence. The default mindset is one of lack and need, and not of what parents have to give and contribute in the process. So how do you think you can help create more of a culture of reciprocity between parents and teachers, or parents and schools, let's say, in a district, and helping bridge barriers of culture and language in the process?
I can share with you an example that took place in Tulsa. It also is some of the work that I did in Jackson, Madison County, but I will reference Tulsa right now because it was a community in the community school setting that I described to you, with a large number of ELL students, as well as a large number of Latino families. Many were moving into a school district that was at that time, one time predominantly white to predominantly Hispanic, and many of the families felt that they were not connected to the school or neighborhood. There was a lot of controversy about the offerings that were at the school, but what happened was there is in communities, especially around the community school and the network that you're building, there's always someone that has a lot of information, a lot of history. And to find the history and the person that holds that very dearly and to connect with that person, in this case, it was someone not immediately involved with the school, but deeply invested in the school. She had seen a lot happening over the years and knew some of the discrepancies that were occurring in the district as well as in the school community. And once I arrived in Tulsa and made a lot of community meetings and connected with families, she asked to see me. And we had coffee. And she told me more in the 3 hours that we talked that helped me to understand what had happened and what was happening and what needed to happen to really improve on that community. She became a connector. From there, I got lots of names and lots of information about how to best get information to families. And so those were informal networks, so to speak, that when we had a crisis or we had information that we needed to disseminate to families, some that may not come to the school, there were certain people that information, once they shared it with you, they would share it with the entire community, and in a very quick time, people knew what was happening. That was a trusting relationship that was established because it was able to make some connections with other people that are highly vested into the community. I will always treasure that because it was so impactful in that community and made a big difference. People began to trust again, even when times were really turbulent in Oklahoma at the time when there were immigration talks and conflicts and talks about, removing students from the state and from their families. It was just a horrible situation. And at that school and in the community, we were able to best respond to the needs of the families and the communities because they knew if we said something, we were going to stand by it. So that trust had already been formed, and it was very significant in making that connection with people that could help you to deliver those messages. That's how that happened.
Ms. Silverio?
Oh, great. I have two microphones. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. My apologies for being late, but I had another commitment before coming here. It's good to see you, Dr. Ruffin.
Thank you. It's
I
good to
hope
see you,
we've
too.
made you feel at home these past couple of days that you've been here. Continuing on the engagement piece, we constantly ask about the parents and the teachers. Can you give us a little bit of an example of how you would interact with our students? Being the superintendent sometimes feels like the superintendent is somewhat detached from the students because that is left to the principals and the teachers. But we, in this particular community, these children love to be recognized and acknowledged. Can you give us a little bit of information as to how you would interact with those, with the students?
Yeah, that's an exciting part of the superintendent's job. I met with some wonderful students yesterday, some inside their schools while they were being instructed, and had great conversations with some of the high school students, and they're just amazing. I connect with students by having a student advisory, which is represented of both middle school and high school, and they meet with me and they share with me some of their successes and concerns and issues, and they tell me a lot. You know, students will share openly with the superintendent those things that are very critical to them and what's happening and ways that they would like for you to be aware and maybe even intercede on their behalf. I also attend students' activities and functions. I'm present in the schools. I visit classrooms. I get to see what children are doing. I'm invested in their activities that they're doing inside their classroom and outside. I attend sporting events and concerts, and students see me and know me as the superintendent because they see me outside of that office that I, hold. I'm really not an office superintendent. I engage with families, community, I engage with children regularly, sometimes daily, inside their classroom setting. The number of schools that we have, I schedule it so that I spend quality time in the schools. I get to hear and see what's going on with the learning, as well as I connect with teachers that way. And it's good also for principals to see that I care, and I'm not just going to send a memo, but I'm really personal in the way that that's going to happen. One of the ways that I think it's critically important when I do engage with students is if they tell me something or if there's something they want me to be aware of, they need to see that I'm also going to respect that and take some action. Students I've connected with on Twitter. And of course, initially it was because they really wanted to know if I was going to call school off, and that was the quickest way to find out. but eventually, they were excited when I posted about winning a basketball game or a football game, or recognized I recognized a student that had signed with a college, and or students that performed outstanding on the academic decathlon or a national blue ribbon school. Then it really caught on, and that's how we were able to connect in a wide range and quickly, because students do those social media really fast. But personal, one-on-one, very important for me.
Thank you.
Mayor Rivera?
We have had a string of superintendents that had gotten themselves into trouble around this issue about finances, and something from as simple as expense reimbursements for expenses, to for a community that's not that wealthy, expenses that were charged that just really didn't make any sense for the district. That's the foundation to the question that I feel is critical for our community, which is what strategies do you have, or would you employ or have employed to manage the fiscal and financial health of the district? Understanding that, like you said, everything is done so you can make the classroom a better place, right? But I'm really specific about how do you manage a budget that's as big as this one?
Well, it's absolutely important that there's credibility, and then honesty and integrity cannot be compromised, period. And the budget and the finances and the way that monies are being expended has to show up in the classroom. It has to show up to benefit the children. It has to benefit and support the teachers in being able to deliver the quality instruction that you're expecting. So there cannot be any errors in that area. The way that I've managed that, and I've been very strong in creating balanced budgets and also allowing for a very healthy fund balance for my previous districts. But checks and balances are very important. While I work very closely with my CFO, I also have a very hands-on approach when it comes to the budget. I like to know where the money's going, and I like to know that it's making a difference. And I depend very strongly on my staff, but I am also quite hands-on in reviewing purchases and seeing how we're making purchases that are, and I ask questions about, is this going to benefit students? And I encourage professional development. But I also want to know that the professional development is something that we can bring in-house, or if it's professional development that we really need to attend, or if there are other options that might be better utilized to support our school system. So hands-on, checks and balances, and definitely making certain that we are without question in terms of how we're utilizing that money for teaching and learning.
You got some water up there if you want to take some.
I know, but it
Feel
just
free.
keeps coming back. Thank you.
Dr. Custodia-Laura?
So my question is, what are the greatest advantages and disadvantages of working on the receivership?
I think that the receivership model that is implemented here in Lawrence has several components that have been a better implementation than some of the state takeovers that I have seen. For instance, in a state takeover, it is hard to come back and say, we're going to form a partnership, because it's hard to form a partnership with someone after you've taken it over. But in a receivership, you have the opportunity to bring in partners and develop relationships over a common cause. You know that there were some practices that needed to improve on. You know that there were some expectations to be able to get a better system that was going to supply the needs of all of the students. And you knew that the student achievement had to improve because students deserve a quality education. And in a receivership, you knew that everybody had to own that. It was not only the State Department that had to own it, because there's a part that they play, but the people on the ground making that work done every day, that's where it's going to happen. So in a receivership, you had an opportunity to be able to engage in how are we going to work together, competing priorities perhaps, but how are we going to work together when we know we've got to get better, it's not negotiable, but maybe there are other ways of doing it so that you have the autonomy, you have the open architecture, you have the different ways of being able to engage if you're not making as much success. So in a receivership, I think that that could be a benefit with everyone having a role and playing together. I think some of the disadvantages is that it gives the impression that somebody else knows how to do it better than you do. And so for some people, that's offensive. And it's important that we recognize that. While a receivership has the benefits, that challenge is, so how is it that someone on the outside can tell me how to do this better on the inside? And that can rub people the wrong way. And when you have a diverse group of people working together, you're going to have both views at the table working, and we need to work together to say, how are we going to get to the point where we could be in local control while we're still in receivership? But that's some of the pros and cons.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Mariano?
Yes, thank you. Our school system has been working on a standards-based report card. How would you assess the district's readiness to implement such a move, and how would you prepare families for this change? Also, what are your thoughts about performance-based assessments, and where do you think they could be used effectively?
In my previous district, we had a standards-based report card for kindergarten through first grade. And the challenges were in making certain that people understood and accepted it, because most people are familiar with the A, B, C, D, and you translate that, when in reality it doesn't really tell you more about how students are learning those skills. We found that in order to successfully communicate that to parents, we needed the one-on-one even time to explain, what does this mean? Because now we were looking at standards, we were gauging skills, we were putting a check or a percentage about something that was not, parents were not accustomed to seeing. And just because we thought it might have been a good idea to go to standards-based, if our parents didn't understand it, it absolutely meant nothing. Because the bottom line was, our parents wanted to know, is my child passing? And in a standards-based report card, you're not so much talking about passing, you're talking about have they learned those skills that will help them to be able to acquire the next skill. So there's some challenges there. There could be some benefits, but it has to be effectively communicated. And I don't believe that by rolling it out with all grade levels at one time works as efficiently as taking it one grade at a time and really explaining it thoroughly to parents that they can understand it. And also preparing teachers and the staff for being able to implement it, because it is a far different approach to learning than we've previously examined. The second part of your question about competency-based and compensation and the based on performance. We have, my last two districts have had a competency-based and we called ours TVAS, which was a measure of growth for students, and not only student achievement, but growth. It has had mixed reviews over both districts that I've worked with. It's the entire state, actually. But when clearly explained to the teachers about the formula and how it was calculated and how it was a part of an evaluation system that could mean higher pay for teachers, it was gradually more receptive. The pushback that is still we receive is when teachers do not feel that they're being evaluated by an administrator that can give them meaningful feedback. So it's really important that the feedback that teachers are getting is valued, it's action-based, it's observable, and it's something that can be used to help the teacher to improve rather than to see the teacher fail. And once that approach has been taken, we've seen on an evaluation on a year-to-year basis that it's improved.
We hit time there, thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
Sure. Again, good morning. Good to see you. I'd like to ask a question around the current model for the district is one of a lot of autonomy for different schools. And I'd love your thoughts around, and you know, I'm in education, so I'm trying to avoid all the education jargon that I typically use and just ask it as straightforward as possible. So, you know, it is my view that autonomy can be something that helps to drive student achievement, but it's not necessarily a guarantee that it will. So from a district perspective, what are some of the things that you're looking at throughout the course of the year to better assess how well a school is using its autonomy? And what's your view that the district should play if a school is not, you know, really demonstrating achievement for its students? What does autonomy look like in that context, and what's the role of the district specifically in that kind of context?
I am supportive of the autonomy when I see schools succeeding at high levels, and that is being sustained over time. I think that I know I value what the leadership and what the teachers and staff are doing and the community is doing to be able to improve student learning at that school, and I want to support them in continuing to grow and to develop. Where schools are not progressing, and we have the data to support that it's not been progressing for some time, I do believe that sooner than later there needs to be some intervention. Bringing everybody to the table, defining what support looks like, whether it's support from a teacher leader, whether it's support in being able to roll out the curriculum that they've subscribed to, whether it's making certain that there's a fidelity of implementation of the programs that they've purchased and they've subscribed to. We need to intervene at a time that is going to be beneficial so that the school can experience the success and students can see that. So the variance in supports would be critical to a school that has autonomy or had autonomy, but it's not making the success that they need to, and it's not evident in student improvement. And more intervention for that school than one that's really flourishing and has shown sustainability in that model.
Thank you. Ms. Paris?
What do you think the most important first steps a superintendent should take in a new district?
I'm sorry, could you?
What do you think their first steps should be in a new district?
I think that one of the very first steps is really connecting with the board that has hired them to be able to understand the unified vision and their direction. I think the 100-day plan is a strategic plan to walk in where everybody knows that when she comes in, this is going to be taking place. That includes listening, that includes sharing, it includes some actionable plans, it includes a vision and a direction, and some timelines. I think that needs to happen immediately once the superintendent comes into a district. Connecting with all of the people that you met with during the interview and many more people after you get selected, so you can continue to listen and to learn to be able to clarify and set a direction for the district. That's very important to connect with people. To do what you said, so it's not just something you said in an interview, but it's something that you are absolutely going to do, and people know that she said it, and now I see what that looks like. She's done it.
Great. Ms. Rizzo?
Many parents who have children on an IEP regularly report that services are not provided on a consistent basis. How would you make sure that children who receive special education are receiving the services as stated on their IEP?
Sometimes when that happens, and I can give you an example of how that has happened very recently in the district that I'm currently serving, to recognize that there were some discrepancies, and to recognize and to support the parent and to support the school in determining what are we going to do to rectify that. I've assigned a staff member who can be an active participant in the IEP implementation process. We found the root cause of that, and in several instances, it was the way that the schedule was being applied to provide the student with the services they needed with a teacher assistant that was going to be inside that classroom. So the person from the support staff was helping the school and helping the parents and helping the teacher to effectively implement that IEP, because there were some discrepancies in the actual implementation of that IEP. To make certain that the student was receiving the services. It's not only just a monitoring device, although that was important. When we found out there was a discrepancy there, monitoring was important in this particular case. But we also wanted to see, was everyone supported to be able to effectively implement it? And we sent those supports as needed and as requested by the school and the parent.
Thanks. Ms. Walkowski?
Dr. Ruffin, you had the opportunity to go to our high school yesterday, which is one of the newer, nicer buildings in the district. There are a lot of old buildings and old schoolhouses, two of which caught on fire in the last 18 months, having to displace our children and the staff alike. In addition, I know for a fact my children go to school 11 months out of the year in a schoolhouse that does not have central AC, so it gets hot in many common areas of the schoolhouse. There are, it's just in old neighborhoods. How would you prioritize all of the maintenance and facilities requirements that might not be up to par in the city and make some needed improvements for our schools?
Yes, I understand that two of the schools are a possibility for a new school being created in the future. But in the time being, I have had experiences working with similar aging school buildings, leaking roofs, very poor heating and air, old systems, even the old boiler systems, and really poor conditions for students and teaching and staff. And leaky roof, deteriorating roofs that hadn't been replaced in over 25 years. What we did was to create a comprehensive plan, multiple-year plan, and prioritize those projects that needed to happen first. And then we shared those, because when you have so many issues, you really do have to prioritize them based on the budget, and then you have to make them happen. When you talk to families and communities, the priority that eventually comes out has to be one that you honor and people can see that you're taking care of one issue at a time, and that you do it honestly and transparently so people know, yes, we have a lot of issues with the buildings. These are the ones that have been identified as the top priority will happen with a time frame, and you have to make those happen. Unfortunately, I also had 2 experiences with relocating a school while some natural disasters happened in those schools. One through a storm that totally demolished a building and had to move the entire school to another location and until that building was able to be repaired. And that recently happened a couple of years ago. And the other one recently happened in August of last year, where a school had to be relocated because a tree fell on the roof. It was a historic building. It was destroyed, could not happen. We co-located 2 schools and did some major repairs and had at the end of this year, that school will now return to their previous location. It has been an inconvenience to staff. What I found was helpful was the fact that it was communicated. We communicated that plan. We made sure people understood what happened, what caused it, what are we doing about it. We made some special accommodations to try to alleviate some of the stress and the stress on families, because it was a neighborhood school. Children were walking to school, and now we had to provide busing. But we did it because it was convenient for the parents, and it made sure that they were continuing in their school where they felt very comfortable, even though it was in another location temporarily. That's how we managed that.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia?
I know that many students face mental health issues, and I just wanted to know what is your view on that and how you can improve the services that we have in our schools.
That is a growing issue, and I have experienced that in several districts, and recognizing that the supports that are placed inside the schools are critically important to students feeling that they have access to the services that they need. We've included community supports and services as well. We have been very fortunate to form partnerships with Agape. We formed relationships with City Year, actually had a grant with City Year to be able to locate in the school and to provide in-house services for students and families. We also had some professional development for our staff and all of us to recognize some of the signs of mental illness. Out of the surveys and research that we did, we also came to understand that trauma was a critical issue for many of our students that experienced a lot of trauma in their lives, which was significant. Because a student could be at school doing very well and something tragic happened in their community. They saw something happen or they experienced something, and that student did not return quite the same. And we needed to be aware of that. It was affecting our schools, and it was affecting our children, and we needed to provide services. As a result of that, and knowing and getting to know our students and our community very well, we were able to bring in behavior analysts. We were able to bring in some trauma professional development to our teachers and our staff and community to recognize those signs when they saw it in students. We were able to increase our network so that our police departments and our community and those businesses around our community would help communicate when something happened in the neighborhood that would affect our children inside the schools. And then we had the response team ready to do something about it. We added social workers and counselors with the expertise to be able to work with children and families that had experienced this kind of either mental illness or experiences with trauma. We did the complete wraparound services to take care of the child and to take care of the family. In addition, we also created a network so that our high school, because we had neighborhood schools, so if something happened in middle school, if that child experienced something or something happened in the neighborhood, chances are that child had a sibling at another school. And the network allowed the communication to permeate the organization. So if we had one thing happen to that middle school child and it affected the high school child, the staff became aware of it so that they could provide some support when that child walked into school the next morning.
Dr. Ruffin, could you just, for clarification, tell everyone, I think everyone's familiar with City Year, could you tell everyone Agape, could you give us a definition on that?
It is an organization, faith-based, that provides some in-house services to our students in mental health for the students as well as the families. They provided the counselors, at least 2 of them that were in-house. They saw students on an as-need or referral basis, and they also worked with the families so that the whole child could be addressed. It was a strong community and faith-based organization that provided those kinds of assistance in 2 districts that I worked with, and very strong in Memphis and located physically in a couple of our buildings.
Thank you.
Very strong community and faith-based support.
Thank you. So we've completed 3 rounds of questions. Ms. Garcia, would you be ready to ask and start our 4th round? Or I can, if you want a little time, I can begin somewhere else.
Yeah, I actually have another question. Oh, I just wanted to know, because I'm really into the arts, and I just wanted to know how you would go about to expand the arts in schools, especially like early on, not just in high school.
I was absolutely amazed at the wonderful artwork I saw yesterday. The high school, the murals, the work that I saw in the elementary schools, the posting of all of the great work. I would expand it, and I will tell you why. The visual arts and the performing arts are very dear to me. I do not believe that I would be a superintendent of schools. It certainly would not have been privileged to have worked with so many wonderful people had it not been for music, which was not provided very early when I started. But when it did, it opened up an avenue of opportunity for me that I would never have been exposed to. So it's very dear to me to provide that to my students wherever I go. To expand the arts and to do so at a very early age, I believe there are opportunities for students to discover their creative self, and that's very important. And I would definitely want to support that to continue into this district. There's a lot of talent here. I was so impressed.
Thank you. Ms. Walkowski?
What kind of activities and events would you host in the community to get to know the student and parent body before you, if you were given the job title and you came to our city?
Some of the activities that I've participated in were by invitation or by my reading some of the community events and attending. I hosted many community forums and did so in school, in community centers that were close to families and communities so that they could attend by walking if they choose to do so, or they could attend because they made plans in advance. The community forums were advertised, so we did a really strong marketing plan and communicated it in multiple languages so those parents would know when I was going to be present there. I attended a lot of church events because in some of the communities that I've worked with, the church was also a center, and they invited me. So I would attend, sometimes I would speak. I would always be present to answer questions and make connections with families. I spoke at various community events that were extended to me by the chamber, had wonderful relationships with the city council, with both mayors, because I had there was a city and a county mayor in my previous district, and many times there were events that I was invited to because they were connected with other people, and that's how I got to meet so many parents and so many community members. Likewise, there were activities, PTO meetings, and there were parent events that occurred at the schools, and I would be present there. Even if I did not have a part, I was present, and parents could talk with me. I did a lot of reading. I was invited to do reading to the students because we had a Jackson Reads Million program, which engaged the community in helping children and reading to children. I participated there. I met a lot of parents through that because they came, they wanted to share their reading with their students, so I got to meet with them there. Those are some of the ways that I have engaged in the community and met parents and continued that opportunity. We also had parent advisories. I would continue that if I was here in Lawrence, and open it up to other parents as well. It's not just a committee, it's not an isolated committee, but it's open for other parents to attend, even if there is a committee that's probably representing different schools.
Thank you. Ms. Rizzo?
In working on the receivership, how would you, or how would be your relationship with the actual school committee members, since they do have a lot of access to parents in the community? How would be your working experience with them?
I really enjoyed meeting with the school committee yesterday, and I would hope that if I'm chosen as superintendent, we could continue that on a regular basis. Maybe schedule it in advance so that we know that there's going to be dedication and time to really hear and to listen and to really make them a valued part of the work that we're going to be doing. That would be very important to me, and very important to the progress that we make here in Lawrence.
Thank you. Ms. Paris?
You've described some partnerships you formed with outside organizations. Can you describe more partnerships? I know you mentioned Delta Faucet. Are there other partnerships that you've formed within your district?
Yes, we were very fortunate and formed some partnerships with the Jackson Chamber and the African American Chamber. There were two chambers in Jackson as well. Formed some strong collaboratives with Bodine Toyota plant, which was located in Jackson. They became a critical partner as we were developing the manufacturing strand in our early college high school and other strands that we had in all of our high schools. We had 5 high schools. And they were able to really help us to define some of the work ethic and some of the necessary skills and talents that our students needed to have to be successful and employable. We also had a very strong relationship with the CO. The CO was created by one of the entrepreneurs in our district and provided coding classes and entrepreneurial services for a community of learners. And they were a strong partner with helping us to create the coding class and offer opportunities for our students who were participating in a class in my school district, offered them an opportunity through a competitive process to also earn points and experience a visit in San Francisco with LinkedIn and Google and other large companies that were really high on the market for technology. In addition to that, we partnered with Gerdau, which was also a manufacturing firm, Kellogg, Procter & Gamble. It used to be Procter & Gamble. It's no longer, I think, that anymore, but it was located in Jackson. We made a lot of connections there, a very strong connection with the community college and the technical college. We sat side by side with the community college, wrote curriculum, wrote a plan, wrote a clear career path for our students, not only in early college high, but in the other high schools, so that our students more than quadrupled the number of dual credit courses that they were taking. And we did that through a partnership. Our students attended, we knew the pathway they needed to attend. We knew that they were going to be successful because we sat side by side with our partner and developed that. Those are some of the partnerships that we had.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
Great. This question is building on a little bit, I think, what Jess asked earlier. Prior to, or as part of this process, we conducted and then developed a leadership profile where we heard from community members around what were their priorities for the next superintendent. And there were many things listed, and one thing that really resonated with me was just really recognizing and leveraging the rich diversity that's here in the community. And a question I have is, something else that came from that profile is they want, the community wanting a superintendent who not only recognized the assets, but had a real commitment to cultural competence, both as an individual, but to create a vision to continue to further, I think, strengths and assets around cultural competence, primarily among staff, but really in our broader community. And I'd love to better understand, both from your personal experience, what that means to you when you hear this question, and what experience you have as a leader, placing cultural competence at the top of what you expect of your staff.
It's extremely important. And sometimes maybe a little misunderstood, but cultural competence is critical. I think it's critical right now in America, period. but it's critically important in our schools as we celebrate the diversity that comes to the table. One of the students asked a question yesterday because he was just asking, what ways could the system be better, and recognizing that he may have come from one school and felt really welcome there, but went into another school and didn't feel quite so welcome, and asked how I would change that, which segues into your question. People need to understand people. It's critically important that you know the person, not just the fact that they're going from one grade to the other, but you need to know some history. You really can't teach a student effectively until you know who they are. And they're much more than a name or a grade or a nationality. They have something, they have a story to tell, and that's very much a part of them. And in cultural competence, you respect that and you honor that because you know that people bring some enriching characteristics to the table that is absolutely unique to them. And I think to understand that and to really work with that with our students and with our staff is critically important. To know that sign language, or to know that language, to know that religion, to know that celebrations, to know that where you have come from plays a critical part in who you are and what you bring to the table is critically important. We've got to know that about our children. We've got to know that about ourselves, our staff. It's important. We have to do that. And so it means really going much deeper than just here are our students. A lot of them are speaking a different language. The majority of our students are Latino. That's not enough. We've got to know the history. We've got to know the child, we've got to know the family, we've got to know what is it meaning to them to be able to get an education here in Lawrence. I also told the students, and I'll share with you, it's such an awesome opportunity because our students know how to speak more than one language. They're marketable, they're sought after, and we need to grow and nurture that because so many times students, adults are going back to school to learn another language. Our students know that. We need to capitalize on that. It's an advantage for them, and we need to celebrate that, and that's part of cultural competence as well.
Thank you. Ms. Mariano?
Thank you. Dr. Ruffin, as you know, our district has been under receivership for 6.5, almost 7 years now. What steps do you believe are necessary to begin the transition of the school system back to local control?
I think that there's a great opportunity with the selection of your superintendent to begin that process immediately. The data that will be brought to the table will cause us to work together to build that next 3-year plan. That's definitely a first step, and we've got to see results. I think that's part of earning the trust of the community and the trust that we are able to operate effectively and work collectively, work collaboratively, and we put that into practice because it will be seen. And I think that is an important first step to being unified, to being inclusive and sharing the alliance with the school committee, with the community, and demonstrating what that looks like, that we are able to work together to make great things happen on behalf of children. I think we begin that process immediately, and we show every year that we're going to make gains and we're going to be able to make happen for children and continue the great work that's happened and move forward so that we can demonstrate that we're able to do that on our own, and it goes back to local control, and we build the trust and the capacity to be able to do that.
Thanks. Dr. Custodio-Laura?
Yes, my question is about ESL students. They have been, you have approached very well how we can engage parents that they are non-English speakers. But my question is related to ESL students. I came to this country also as an ESL student, and I work closely with them here in the community. And one of the frustrations that they have, and I also perceive as formerly one of them, or I'm still one of them, is that it doesn't matter if you are advanced in math or sciences, what keeps you behind is the English piece. And it's kind of frustrating because a lot of the time the strategy for them to catch up in the system is to put them one grade below. And it is very frustrating because, you go to the math and sciences and you know all that, and you still left behind because of the English. Sometimes even in the classroom, you're perceived as knowing less because you have an accent. And so my question to you is, coming here to Lawrence, where we have a large population of recent immigrants each year, what are the strategies that you will have to ensure that those kids are engaged, retained in school, and not left behind?
Absolutely. I think that that's part of cultural competence as well, when you recognize that a language or an accent should never stop a person from really seeing what is the capacity of that student and the yearning of that student to really achieve at high levels. So I don't see it as a barrier, but I understand what you're talking about, because sometimes it possibly can be utilized that way. As superintendent, I would want to make certain that we understand clearly that we are to make certain that our students are getting selected for advanced classes and encouraged for advanced classes, that we recognize we may need some additional supports to be able to help the student, but by no means are we to hold a student back because we perceive that they may be a challenge with the language. I think one of the examples I would share with you, we have done some capstone projects with our high school students, and I think that we could start that even earlier. And what that is a project that our students engage in. It's a multiple month project of reading and writing and researching, and it's multiple interdisciplinary. It allows the student to be able to explore a passion to them, whether it's a career or whether it's a connection or problem solving within the community. And students have an opportunity to express themselves through visual as well as utilizing their preferred language as well as English to be able to publicly speak and present it. We do that more than 1 year because we want to build the confidence of the student to be able to stand in public and to deliver. That has worked really well for students to both celebrate the language that they're most comfortable with while they're learning English, but also an opportunity to really research a project that's very dear to them. It really causes an increase in their confidence to be able to stand in public and to be able to articulate that among their peers, as well as we invite other people from throughout the community. That's one way that we recognize the great strength that lies in the ability to speak more than one language, and we recognize the talents of our students in multiple ways.
Thank you. John, can I have a follow-up question?
Yes.
Okay, so the follow-up question is, it goes back to, you were mentioning the capstone project, or, different ideas to assess the students. Would that be in lieu of the MCAS, for example? Because I could see a student that arrived here to the United States and Lawrence as a senior and not passing the MCAS because of that piece, because of the English, and knowing that they have other capacities and other ways to assess them so they can go to the next level. Is that what you were referring to?
The capstone did not replace the state test.
Okay.
And so to make sure that our students would be successful in completing and passing the MCAS, which determines that pass or fail in the state of Massachusetts, it would be critically important to engage in the listening and speaking and writing and to spend some additional time with students so that they could feel more comfortable when they are taking the MCAS. Okay. We've done some of that instruction. It is done a long time before the test is part of the instruction that we give on a regular basis, and we have seen students improve as a result of that intentional instruction that was given aside from regular instruction.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Ruffin, I want to ask, and I just want to mention again, as part of the hiring subcommittee, I had an opportunity to ask Dr. Ruffin a lot of questions in the confidential interview round. So I want to ask something just a little bit different. One thing that really stood out on your resume was you began as a band director, and if I have it correct, 14 years as in your first job as you entered the education field as a band director. And I'm sort of curious, as you came out of school, and I know you would continue to go get a master's and doctorate ultimately, but as you came out with your bachelor's, was the desire to be a music teacher? Was the hope to someday be a principal? As you did this stint as band director for 14 years, did you think and see that someday you would be a superintendent, as we know you've already been? Like, where was your head and heart as you entered the profession? Because it's just really striking that you were 14 years as a band director, and if you can talk a little bit about that experience, that'd be great.
I would be happy to. I smiled because there's a story, and I guess that's a part of my history as well. I had a passion for music. When I discovered it, it was late because we didn't offer band. I have to tell you another part of that, and we could talk about it later. I don't want to take up my 3 minutes. But
my clock's moving a little slower on this one.
I attended a rural elementary school, and then I moved to the city. I didn't move to the city. I just went to school in the city. I went to school in a Catholic school, and I had a Creole accent, so students make fun of me, and I was quiet, so I didn't have a voice. We didn't have a band, we didn't have any of those things, but we did have a great education, and eventually in the 8th grade, there was a band director hired, and I saw and my mom was with me, and I saw this beautiful shiny instrument with silver keys, black instrument with silver keys, and it was a clarinet, and I asked my mom to let me play that instrument. And it was very tough for my mom to afford that instrument. It was $199. My mom invested. Single mom, she invested. I had a voice for the very first time, and it was through music. That changed my life. I went on and I got a bachelor's degree, and I could not get a job. I was told that they would not hire me because I was a woman, and I was not able to be a woman in a high school band or middle school band for that matter, and I was not hired, and I went to get my master's degree because I was going to do something with my life, so I went to get a master's degree. I came out with my master's degree. I still couldn't get a job. But something happened. We can talk about that later. I got a job in October as a band director. Well, actually, I got a job in October as a music teacher, teaching kindergarten through 5th grade, and as a part-time assistant band director at the middle and the high school. And eventually, people saw that I was good at what I did, and I was offered a job because someone went on a sabbatical at Edgar Martin Middle School, where I stayed for 14 years. I grew the band program from middle school to approximately 250 band members, more than half of the school. And that was my passion. My students did really well. I connect with them even today, and they're all over the United States. And music changed their lives. But it really changed mine because of the people that I met. I went on to be successful in that realm, and my principal, I had great mentors. That's why the value of other people helping you realize your dreams and your vision is really good. I had a principal that approached me. He was a mentor, and he says, I think you need to be an assistant principal. You need to go in administration. I said, well, why would I want to do that? I didn't want to do that. And he encouraged me. I'm a lifelong learner, so I continue to go to school, but I was not really focused on anything. In particular, I was just going to school because I enjoyed learning. He continued to encourage me, and I said, why? And it's because you have those leadership skills. It's really, we need people like you in that field. A very long story short, shorten it, I took a sabbatical and I went back to school full-time, and I did that because, first of all, I didn't want to be an administrator, but I thought that the only way I would really answer this question, because here's my mentor saying you need to do this, was to really immerse myself into a full-time internship, because part-time internship would not have allowed me to really be at a school full-time and really see the, so I did that. And I became, and I was interested in it because I had great mentors there too, and they helped me. And I want to add that by that time, people were no longer making fun of me because of my accent. I had pushed open through some doors. I also made certain that before I became an administrator, I was going to test it out, and I loved it. I loved it because I had more influence on teaching and the students, and I was able to implement programs that were going to help children to be better successful. And, you know, that was also at the height of integration. So to have a woman who was also at that time considered a minority, and I don't consider us minorities anymore, but we were considered minority, and to be able to influence other children was very important for all of my children that I taught, because I knew what it felt like. And then from there, I became an assistant principal. I was recruited, therefore, in every other job that I've ever had for the results. And I've always had a passion for the music. I continued to engage in the band director and judging in other states and judging festivals for about 2 years after I became a principal, and then I had to eventually stop doing it because it was an all-encompassing job, because I'm very passionate about what I do, so I give it 100%. And but that's how I became, plus band, you learn how to read music. And I was learning another language. My students were learning. I'm really passionate about learning how to read the music, not just, you know, singing to the radio. And so the music education part was very important to me. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Rivera?
Thank you for taking my question. I was also intrigued by the fact that you were a music teacher. This is a little bit more difficult question. If you Google my name and mayor, there's gonna come up some stuff that I'm not really proud of, that people would say, I can't believe that happened. And if given an opportunity, I could probably explain it to a group of people that would say, oh, well, that makes sense. If somebody Googled your name, is there an instance or a matter that would come up, not necessarily that you're not proud of, that it's kind of, will put a question in people's minds, and what that thing is, and give us your 1 minute spiel of what your side of it is.
Yeah. Well, yes, if you Google me, you'll probably see a lot of things. I will tell you that I'm very proud of the work that has been done, and I've done some work that has not always been popular. So you will have critics that will think that and say, because people place anything that they choose to in social media, yes, you're going to see perhaps some comments and perhaps some things, but I also would say that I made some courageous and tough decisions that were for the best interest of children. At the time, when I was hired as superintendent, the job was to be able to reorganize the district. That was the mission at that time. And looking at how to find the funds to best implement the board's strategic plan. I worked for a 9-member board. We went through an extensive process that called for a lot of collaboration, but some tough decisions at the end of that. As a result of that, 5 schools closed. That's not popular any way you look at it. Even if people agree that something needs to happen and that schools may need to close, you're never going to get 100% agreement that that school needs to close. And so that brought some controversy, and that may be some unpleasantness. I've also made the best interest of children a top priority when it comes to staffing, and I've made some tough decisions about staff, and I don't regret that. But some were popular, and some were not. And you may see that. You will not see anything controversial in terms of my moral or ethical behavior in any way. You will see, when you look at the whole story, you will see a person who is very much committed to children and to staff and to making the right decisions so that they can have a better life.
Thank you. Ms. Silverio?
Thank you. Dr. Ruffin, getting back to cultural competence, one of the challenges that we're faced here at the high school level is perhaps not having guidance counselors that start off at an early, when the kids come in as freshmen, to guide them throughout those 4 years to make sure that they continue on to higher ed and that they are aware of the opportunities that are there for them, and also engaging their parents to understand what the process is for the next 4 years. Can you give us a little bit of feedback as to how you would change or improve that environment so that our children, when they come in, are greeted with the expectations that they're going to move on to higher education and continue their studies?
Yes. We experience some of the same challenges in students and families being well-informed about their career options. We approached it one of the ways we approached it is making certain that our guidance counselors were going to know some of the career paths that students had as an option, and that they were going to be informed about what those options could mean for a family, for their livelihood, and for their advancement. We also wrote a grant for a career guidance counselor who would be focused specifically on career options. And that counselor made certain the connection with families to better understand what a manufacturing job looks like in 2017 and 18, because there was still some misconception about what manufacturing work looked like, and there was also misunderstanding sometimes about what those opportunities might look like in terms of jobs and ability to earn a really good living. And we hired this career counselor and worked with our regular school counselors to explain to children and families what those options would be like. Additionally, I assigned a staff member who was going to be over to work with the school and the staff to bring in some of our partners to talk and engage with children and families, and to also do site visits to some of the potential employers so that they can actually see what that job looks like in real practice. You know, because we found that while we had Toyota manufacturing, we had Toyota plant there, a lot of times people thought that was an old, dirty working place, but when they got to visit it and they got to see what it looks like in the advanced technology required to operate, it changed what they were able to see and experience, and it also gave an opportunity to see what some of those options might actually look like. Investing in the right people to work with the guidance counselors, that career guidance counselors, and working with families and students was very important for students to see their opportunities out there.
I'll turn it over to Ms. Anders in a second. We are coming to the end of the fourth round of questioning. We started a little late, but we're now at what would be the full time. So I'm going to turn that question over in a second. I want to say after that question, we'll give Dr. Ruffin the opportunity to answer. Then we will give Dr. Ruffin a closing statement of 3 minutes. And then, Dr. Ruffin, you're going to go to meet with a small reception with a few elected officials. And I want to just acknowledge their presence here right now, and I know there may be others who join, but we're very honored that City Councilor Maria de la Cruz has joined us, and that City Councilor Pavel Payano has joined us. We thank them, and we know that you will be meeting with them shortly. With that said, I will turn it over to Ms. Anders for a final question.
I'm wondering what's out there now if you Google me. Don't do it.
I've had a lot of posts added in the past 2 days.
I shouldn't have opened that can of worms. I think I'm going to close with asking this one. So there are some of us who have been working with the district who've been very interested in this idea of a two-generation approach to improving educational outcomes, right? That part of what affects a child's ability to perform in school has nothing to do with what's happening in school. It depends on the family and the community and so on. So, and I know that you have spoken about, you know, some of the partnerships that you've developed and so on. Could you talk maybe a little bit more about your understanding of the two-generation approach and when you have created community schools, what have been some of the elements of that you have found to be most helpful, and maybe what some of the challenges have been? And then if I could just sneak one other thing in. So you've been in Lawrence for a couple of days now, and you've come here a couple of times. What do you see are the greatest challenges and opportunities that we're facing as a school district and a community? Thanks.
And if I need some clarification on the last question, again, I'll ask you. I want to answer all of the questions and address it appropriately. The community schools and the concept around the community school was in meeting the needs of the entire family and the school being a hub. We focused a lot of that work on the Ann E. Casey Foundation and the work that she had done in communities, the networking. We also engaged with a community school coordinator that would help to communicate with families in addition to the principal and the staff in a way that would make it more inviting for families to seek information from the school. And that person was very much a community member. It was a person that was housed in the school, worked in the community, bridged relationships and dialogue so that it can have a meaningful experience on behalf of the students that attended the school. We saw some positives there. And in terms of assisting families and the multiple generations, because sometimes we saw multiple generations, to really have those relationships, whether it was with a grandmother or grandfather, with a mother, with a student, because there were various needs within the school community. It wasn't always to engage in getting a GED or to engage in getting a job. Sometimes it was to find the right resources for medical or for treatment, and made certain that those resources were readily available in the school so that we did not have to always send parents somewhere else. That's where we get lost sometimes, when parents have to navigate this complex system and they can't get all their answers answered in one place or somebody to even take them there. So the community school coordinator really helped to navigate all of the various ways that we needed to be very successful for our families. And to understand that, because every child comes in with a different and important factor, and that is important to understanding the whole family unit and how best to serve the student.
Can I ask, just how did you get like a veteran school staff to buy into that model?
It was leadership to talk with staff, to go through some training. There were some visits to Philadelphia and to some of the schools that were actually community schools to see what that looked like in actual practice, and the partnerships that were created with the university that was also a part of that community that was vested in teacher development, as well as the resources that they were providing there for training teachers to be better suited to work in the school environment with some expected outcomes. So it was truly a total partnership with all of the people that were involved, with a huge resources from the university. And the buy-in was, in order for us to best meet the needs of our community, these are the staff members that I need, and then it's also going to guide my hiring practices in the future. That principal was able to do that successfully. She remained at the school for multiple years. She's no longer there now, but she was there for multiple years and truly revered in that school community in implementing that work. And I'm sorry I didn't answer your second part of your question. I was told my time is up.
You wanna?
It's up to you.
We'll give Dr. Ruffin 1 minute on it. Do you want to clarify the?
Just major challenges and opportunities that you see us facing as.
I see the opportunities are endless. And let me talk a little bit about some challenges. The students brought some of those to my attention yesterday, the principals in some of the schools that I saw in terms of facilities and in terms of making certain that we can sustain the model, also sustain a model that's going to be attractive to gain the attention to quality staff that we want to keep here with our current staff, as well as building and adding new staff with that capacity. That's a challenge. And students talked about the challenge of the way the media portrays them. I think the opportunities are for really telling the story, the real story, not just the one you Google, but the real story. The students have a compelling story, and I think the people that are invested in this community do too. And that really is a strength for Lawrence, and the fact that we have the languages that could help children to really connect with their future. We have that opportunity here.
Thank you. Dr. Ruffin, we'll give you 3 minutes for a closing statement, and then we're going to walk you immediately to a room to meet with a few city councilors who are looking forward to the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here before you to answer your questions and to begin connecting with you. I sincerely hope that I have an opportunity to return as your superintendent. I would be so excited to bring the work that you have worked so hard towards and making it so that it takes dominant importance and in getting the district to where we want it to be for all children and for the families. I look forward to the opportunity to use the experiences that I've had in the other states that I've worked in. As I said in my introduction, or very soon at the first question, I don't believe anything happens by chance. I believe this is purposeful. In the opportunities that I had before I accepted the position with the Achievement School District, I did have other options. I chose the option because it was where I could bring the most good to the most students that were in the bottom 5% of the district. And I see this opportunity here as being able to take what I have learned over the last few years and really influence what happens for children and teaching and learning here in Lawrence. I see this as a true opportunity to give back to the community here and to really put those skills and talents to a greater good, to be able to impact children that are going to be changing the world. I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and if I do have the opportunity to come back and to serve as superintendent, you would not be disappointed. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruffin. We greatly appreciate your time this morning. We are about a half hour off schedule, so what we will do at this point is in order so that both candidates will have an opportunity to meet with some of the community leaders, we will be in recess until 2 o'clock when we will begin the second interview. Dr. Ruffin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are in recess.